The Force trembled. Across the galaxy, in the Jedi temple on Coruscant, Master Yoda's ears twitched and his eyes snapped open from meditation. He had felt something impossible, a presence neither light nor dark, neither born of the Force nor separate from it. Something ancient and powerful had just entered the galaxy, arriving like a stone dropped into still water, and the ripples were spreading. On the other side of the city, in his luxurious Senate office, Chancellor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, felt it too. His carefully constructed mask of grandfatherly concern slipped for just a moment as he sensed an unfamiliar power, one that made his Sith-honed instincts scream warnings. Something had changed, something he hadn't foreseen. Neither of them yet knew that an old man in gray robes, leaning on a wooden staff, had materialized in a forgotten alley of Coruscant's lower levels, looking up at the towering cityscape with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms across millennia. Gandalf the Grey had arrived. The breach between universes had been violent and disorienting. One moment, Gandalf had been in Lothlorien, consulting with Lady Galadriel about dark portents in her mirror. The next, reality itself had torn open, not through any mortal magic, but by the will of the Valar themselves. Manwë's voice had echoed in his mind. Another world falls to shadow. Another Dark Lord rises. Go, O Loren. Be what you have always been, the enemy of tyranny and the kindler of hope. Now he stood in a world of metal and light, where towers stretched toward the sky farther than even the greatest works of Numenor, where strange vessels flew overhead, carrying beings from 1,000 different races. But beneath the wonder and the technology, Gandalf's ancient senses detected something terribly familiar. The same corruption he'd fought in Dol Guldur, the same malice that radiated from Barad-dûr, a shadow at the heart of civilization, patient and cunning, weaving its webs while those who should stand against it remained blind. So, Gandalf murmured, his staff's crystal catching the artificial light. Even here, in a galaxy of stars, the same old evil wears a new face. He straightened, his weathered features hardening with resolve. Then I shall do what I was sent to do. I shall oppose it. He began walking, his staff clicking against the metallic ground, following the currents of darkness like a salmon swimming upstream toward its source. Gandalf's wandering through Coruscant's levels attracted attention quickly. His gray robes, pointed hat, and wooden staff marked him as utterly out of place in a world of synthetic fabrics and energy weapons. Clone troopers on patrol stopped him multiple times, confused by this apparent vagrant who spoke with authority about shadows gathering and darkness in high places. It was his words about the Senate that finally brought him to official attention. The evil sits at the very heart of your governance, Gandalf told a bemused clone sergeant. I can feel it, like a wound in the fabric of reality itself. Your Chancellor, he is not what he seems. He is— Sir, you need to come with us, the sergeant interrupted, gesturing to his men. You're clearly suffering from some kind of condition. We'll get you to medical facilities. I am not mad, Gandalf said with such quiet authority that the clones actually stepped back. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. The dark fire will not avail you, any of you, if you do not open your eyes to the threat that even now tightens its grip around this republic. The clones, trained to identify threats and respond to authority, were thoroughly confused. This old man was either dangerously delusional or something else entirely. They contacted their superiors, which is how, 6 hours after arriving in the Star Wars universe, Gandalf found himself standing before the Jedi Council. The council chambers were impressive, a circular room with tall windows overlooking Coruscant's endless cityscape, where the galaxy's most powerful Force users sat in judgment. Gandalf stood in the center, leaning on his staff, his gray eyes moving from face to face with the calm assessment of someone who had counseled kings and questioned the wisdom of the wise. Master Yoda studied him with particular intensity. The ancient Jedi Master could sense something about this stranger, Something that resonated with the Force yet remained fundamentally different. Not dark side corruption, but not precisely light side either. Something older. Mace Windu spoke first, his voice carrying skeptical authority. You've been brought before this council because you've been making concerning statements about the Chancellor and the Senate. You claim to sense darkness and evil at the heart of the Republic. Yet you're not Force sensitive, at least not in any way we recognize. Who are you? I am Gandalf, the wizard replied simply. Called Mithrandir by some, the Grey Pilgrim by others. In my world, I am counted among the Astari, wizards sent to oppose the shadow, and I have been sent here because the darkness I have fought across ages is rising again, in a different form, but with the same malevolent purpose. Sent? Ki-Adi-Mundi leaned forward. Sent by whom? By powers you would call gods, though they would reject that title. The Valor, the guardians of my world, perceived a great catastrophe approaching in this reality. A moment where darkness would triumph and countless lives would be extinguished. They sent me to prevent it. How convenient, Mace Windu said, his tone hard. A mysterious stranger appears with vague warnings and claims of divine mission. We've seen this before. It's usually the prelude to some kind of manipulation or scam. I understand your skepticism, Gandalf said, surprising them with his reasonableness. In your position, I would be skeptical too. But Master Windu, tell me, can you not sense that something is profoundly wrong? That the Republic you serve is being corrupted from within? That the war you fight is somehow false, manipulated by unseen hands? The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. These were concerns that some of them, particularly Yoda and Obi-Wan, had privately discussed. But hearing them from an outsider was jarring. Vague concerns do not constitute evidence, Mace countered. If you have specific accusations, your Chancellor, Gandalf interrupted, his voice dropping to a tone that made several Jedi reach instinctively for their lightsabers, is a Sith Lord. The silence was absolute. Then Mace Windu was on his feet, his hand on his lightsaber hilt. That is an accusation of treason against the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic. You'd better have proof, stranger. I have the evidence of my own senses, Gandalf replied calmly. I have walked in the presence of the Dark Lord Sauron. I have felt the corruption of Saruman the White, who was counted among my order before he fell to shadow. I know evil when I stand before it, Master Windu. And your Chancellor radiates malevolence like a furnace radiates heat. How you cannot sense it is— He paused, understanding dawning. Ah, he has blinded you. Of course, a cunning enemy does not reveal himself until the trap is sprung. Interesting his claims are, Yoda said quietly, his Geimer stick tapping against his chair. Yet proof he offers none. Tell me, Gandalf, if the Chancellor is indeed this Sith Lord, what is his purpose? What does he plan? Gandalf closed his eyes, extending his consciousness, not through the Force, which was closed to him, but through the older awareness granted by his Maiar nature. He felt the threads of manipulation stretching across the galaxy, felt the chains hidden in the minds of soldiers, felt the moment of betrayal approaching like a storm on the horizon. He plans to destroy you, Gandalf said, opening his eyes. All of you. The Jedi Order will be annihilated in a single coordinated strike, executed by the very soldiers you command. Your clone troopers, they carry within their minds a compulsion, a hidden order that will turn them from loyal troops into your executioners. And when the Jedi are dead, your Chancellor will declare himself Emperor and rule through fear and the might of a military that has no choice but to obey. That's insane, another council member said. The clones are loyal. The clones have no choice, Gandalf interrupted, his voice sharp. I have seen this before. The 9 Nazgul were once great kings of men, until Sauron gave them rings of power that enslaved their wills. Your clones carry similar chains, invisible but no less real. They are victims, not villains. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Let's say, hypothetically, you're right about some of this. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium. How would one hide in plain sight as Chancellor? How did Sauron disguise himself as Anatar the Fair and corrupt the smiths of Eregion? Gandalf responded. How did Saruman speak with honeyed words while breeding armies in the pits of Isengard? Dark lords do not announce themselves with fire and thunder. They smile, they offer help, they accumulate power through emergency and crisis until it's too late to resist. He looked at each council member in turn. Tell me true. Has your Chancellor not been granted ever greater emergency powers? Has this war not been strangely prolonged, despite opportunities for peace? Do you not feel that events are being guided by an unseen hand? Yoda's ears drooped slightly. Troubling questions these are. Long have I sensed that clouded the future is, shrouded in darkness. But to accuse the Chancellor is dangerous, yes, Gandalf agreed, which is precisely why he has positioned himself so perfectly. To oppose him is to seem the traitor. To question him is to undermine the Republic. It is a masterwork of manipulation. I would admire the craft if the stakes were not so devastating. Mace Windu crossed his arms. Even if we believed you, which we don't, what would you have us do? March into the Chancellor's office and arrest him based on one strange wizard's claims? I would have you be vigilant, Gandalf said. I would have you trust your own doubts, and I would have you allow me to prove what I say. Let me investigate these inhibitor chips in your clone troopers. Let me demonstrate that your soldiers carry hidden compulsions. Then perhaps you will believe the rest. The council deliberated. Finally, Yoda spoke. A chance we will give you, but supervised you will be. Master Kenobi, accompany this Gandalf. Investigate his claims about the clones. If truth in his words there is, report back you will. Of course, Master Yoda, Obi-Wan said, bowing. He turned to Gandalf with an expression mixing curiosity and skepticism. Come with me then, Gandalf the Grey. Let's see if your wisdom matches your confidence. As they left the council chambers, Gandalf murmured, Master Kenobi, a word of advice. Do not underestimate your Chancellor. I have fought his like before. They are patient, they are cunning, and they are far more dangerous than they appear. I'll keep that in mind, Obi-Wan replied. Then, more quietly, though between you and me, some of what you said resonates. The war has felt wrong for some time, as if we're not fighting against an enemy but participating in someone else's game. That, Gandalf said gravely, is because you are, and the game is nearly over, unless we can change the board before the final move is made. Their first stop was the clone barracks, where Obi-Wan introduced Gandalf to the 212th Battalion. Commander Cody greeted them with crisp military efficiency, his face behind the helmet curious about this strange robed figure. Commander Cody, Gandalf said, studying the clone with an intensity that made the soldier uncomfortable. Tell me, do you ever have dreams you cannot remember? Moments where your thoughts feel not quite your own? Cody hesitated. Sir, all clones experience standard conditioning. It's part of our training. That is not training, Gandalf said, his voice gentle but firm. That is control. Commander, I need to ask you to trust me. Something I know is difficult for a soldier asked to trust a stranger. But I believe there is something in your mind, placed there by those who created you, that could be used to harm people you care about. Would you allow me to examine you? I cannot promise it will be pleasant, but I can promise I mean you no harm. Cody looked at Obi-Wan, who nodded slightly. The council authorized this investigation. I'll be here the whole time. All right, Cody said, removing his helmet. What do you need me to do? Gandalf placed his staff aside and raised his hands, positioning them near Cody's temples without touching. He closed his eyes and extended his consciousness, not force manipulation, but the older magic of the Maiar, the ability to perceive the essence and structure of living things. What he found made his blood run cold. There, nestled at the base of the brain, a foreign object, organic in composition but artificial in design. And within it, a compulsion so powerful and absolute that when triggered, it would override every thought, every loyalty, every memory of friendship or honor. A single command would transform these loyal soldiers into unthinking executioners. "By the valor," Gandalf whispered, opening his eyes. "It is worse than I thought. Commander Cody, you carry within your mind a device that can force you to kill Jedi without hesitation or remorse. And if I'm reading the structure correctly, every clone trooper in the Republic Army carries the same." Cody's face went pale. That's impossible." "Sir, are you certain?" "I have walked Middle-earth for 3,000 years," Gandalf said quietly. "I have seen the works of darkness in forms subtle and gross. This is among the most insidious. To turn good men into unwilling weapons against those they serve." Obi-Wan's expression had shifted from skepticism to horror. "If this is true, Gandalf, we need to remove it. Now." "I can remove it," Gandalf said, "though I'll need time and care. The device is intertwined with neural tissue. A violent extraction could kill or incapacitate. But yes, it can be done. The question is, how many can we free before the trap is sprung?" "How long do we have?" Obi-Wan asked. Gandalf's gray eyes grew distant, sensing the currents of fate. "Not long, days at most. Your Chancellor grows impatient. He senses interference in his plans. He will move soon." At that moment, as if summoned by mention of his name, a Republic aide appeared at the barracks entrance. "General Kenobi, the Chancellor requests your presence immediately. He says it's urgent." Obi-Wan and Gandalf exchanged glances. "That cannot be coincidence," Gandalf murmured. "No," Obi-Wan agreed. "It cannot. Come with me, Gandalf. Let's meet this Chancellor of ours and see if your sensing is as accurate as you claim." Gandalf retrieved his staff, its crystal beginning to glow faintly, not with light, but with gathering power. "Master Kenobi, when we enter that office, you must be prepared for anything. Evil of this magnitude does not suffer exposure lightly." "I'm a Jedi Master," Obi-Wan replied with a slight smile. "I've faced Sith before." "Not like this one," Gandalf said quietly. "Not one who has spent decades perfecting his disguise, gathering absolute power, and preparing to destroy everything you hold dear. But take heart. I have faced the servants of Morgoth and survived. We shall face this together." As they walked through the halls toward the Senate building, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows, a young Jedi Knight with a mechanical hand and troubled eyes. Anakin Skywalker had sensed something when Gandalf arrived, a disturbance that resonated with his own inner turmoil. And now, watching this strange wizard walk toward a confrontation with the one man who had offered Anakin hope for saving Padme, Anakin felt torn between curiosity and concern. He followed at a distance, drawn by instinct to the coming confrontation, not yet knowing that this moment would define the fate of the entire galaxy. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Chancellor Palpatine's office was a masterwork of calculated grandeur. High ceilings, windows overlooking the Senate Plaza, sculptures and art pieces carefully chosen to project wisdom and democratic values. But to Gandalf's senses, walking into that room was like entering Dol Guldur. The air itself felt thick with malice barely contained, corruption wrapped in silk and smiles. Palpatine rose from behind his desk, his aged face arranging itself into grandfatherly warmth. "Ah, Master Kenobi, thank you for coming so quickly. And you've brought a guest. How delightful." His eyes settled on Gandalf, and for just a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. Cold calculation and ancient malice flickered across his features before the pleasant expression returned. "I don't believe we've been introduced." "I am Gandalf," the wizard said, leaning on his staff, his gray eyes never leaving Palpatine's face. "Recently arrived in your galaxy. I have been sharing my concerns with the Jedi Council about shadows gathering in unexpected places." "How poetic," Palpatine said, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "Though I'm afraid I don't quite understand." "Oh, I think you understand perfectly," Gandalf interrupted, his voice dropping to a tone that made Obi-Wan's hand drift toward his lightsaber. "I have walked in darkness, Chancellor. I have stood in the throne room of the Dark Lord Sauron and felt the weight of his malice. I know the signature of corruption when I stand before it, and you, sir, reek of it like a corpse left too long in the sun." The silence was absolute. Obi-Wan stared at Gandalf in shock. Open accusation of the Supreme Chancellor was tantamount to treason, but the wizard stood unmoved, his staff planted firmly on the floor, waiting. Palpatine's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. The temperature dropped, shadows seemed to deepen in the corners, and both Obi-Wan and Gandalf felt pressure building like a storm about to break. "My dear Gandalf," Palpatine said, his voice still pleasant, but now edged with something cold. "You've clearly had a difficult journey. Perhaps you're suffering from disorientation, confusion." "I am suffering from the burden of sight," Gandalf replied. "The curse of seeing clearly when all around me are blind. You are Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who has orchestrated this entire war. You have manipulated both sides, accumulated emergency powers, and positioned yourself to destroy the Jedi Order and seize absolute control. And I will not allow it." For a long moment, Palpatine simply stared at the wizard. Then, slowly, he smiled. And it was nothing like the grandfatherly expression he'd worn moments before. This smile was a predator's acknowledgement of worthy prey. "How interesting," Palpatine said, his voice subtly changing, becoming smoother, more dangerous. "Tell me, Gandalf, and please, do call me by my proper title if you insist on this little drama. How exactly do you plan to stop? Me? You stand in my office, in my Senate, in my Republic. I have armies at my command, the Jedi Council trusts me implicitly, and in a matter of days, every impediment to my rule will be eliminated. What can one old man with a stick possibly do?" "I can speak truth," Gandalf said simply. "I can kindle hope where you have sown despair. I can stand in opposition to tyranny, as I have done for 3,000 years, and I can ensure that when your trap is sprung, it will catch nothing but air, because those you would use as weapons will be freed from your chains." Palpatine's eyes narrowed dangerously. "The clones. You know about the chips." "I know about your contingency order," Gandalf confirmed. "Your Order 66, the command that will turn loyal soldiers into assassins. But I also know it can be undone. The chains can be broken, and once your primary weapon is neutralized, your entire plan collapses." "Chancellor," Obi-Wan said, his voice strained as he processed this exchange. "Please tell me this isn't true. Tell me you're not—" "Oh, Master Kenobi." Palpatine sighed, and now all pretense vanished. His voice became a silken purr of dark satisfaction. "Did you truly never suspect, never question why this war has lasted so long? Why every peace initiative mysteriously fails? Why I've needed ever greater powers to protect the Republic?" He stood, his presence seeming to fill the room. "I am the Senate, I am the Republic, and soon I will be the Empire, with or without the Jedi's cooperation." Obi-Wan's lightsaber blazed to life, blue blade humming. "You're under arrest, Chancellor. The Jedi Council will—" Lightning erupted from Palpatine's fingers. Gandalf's staff rose faster, and the crystal at its peak blazed with white light that caught the Sith lightning and redirected it harmlessly into the walls. The wizard stood unmoved, his power flowing through him like water through a riverbed, ancient, patient, and utterly implacable. "You forget, Sidious," Gandalf said, his voice resonating with power that made the windows rattle. "I am a servant of the secret fire. Your dark lightning is but a shadow of true power. You cannot break what will not bend, cannot corrupt what refuses corruption, cannot destroy what was old when your order was young." Palpatine's eyes widened, genuine surprise flickering across his features for the first time in decades. This old man wasn't just resistant to the dark side, he was fundamentally immune to it. Sith techniques that had broken Jedi Masters slid off Gandalf like water off stone. "Fascinating," Palpatine breathed. "You're not of this universe at all, are you? You're something else entirely. Something I cannot touch with the Force." His smile returned, sharp and calculating. "Which means you're a loose thread in my tapestry. I cannot allow loose threads." Red lightsaber blades ignited throughout the room as hidden panels opened and red-armored royal guards emerged, their force pikes crackling with energy. But before they could attack, the office door burst open and Anakin Skywalker rushed in, his own blue blade lit. "Chancellor, I heard—" He stopped, taking in the scene. Palpatine revealed, Obi-Wan in combat stance, Gandalf standing between them with his staff glowing. "What's happening?" "Ah, young Skywalker," Palpatine said, his tone shifting to wounded innocence. "Thank goodness you're here. These two have gone mad. They've accused me of treason, attacked me without cause. I fear the Jedi Council is attempting a coup." "He lies," Gandalf said, turning to face Anakin. The wizard's gray eyes seemed to see through flesh to the soul beneath, reading the fear and desperation that drove this young man. "Anakin Skywalker, I know your heart. I see the fear that consumes you, fear of loss, fear of failing those you love. And I see how this man has fed that fear, nurtured it, used it to draw you toward darkness." "You don't know anything about me," Anakin said, but his voice wavered. "I know more than you think," Gandalf replied gently. "I knew a hobbit once, Frodo Baggins, who carried a burden that could have destroyed him. The One Ring, an artifact of absolute power, whispered to him constantly, 'Use me, save yourself, protect what you love.' Every moment was a choice between submission and resistance, and he chose resistance again and again. Not because he was strong, but because he refused to let fear make his choices. "This is not the time for children's stories," Palpatine snapped, but Gandalf ignored him. "You fear losing Padme," Gandalf said, and Anakin's eyes widened in shock that this stranger knew his deepest secret. "The Chancellor has promised you power to prevent her death, but Anakin, listen to me. Power cannot prevent death. It can only delay it, corrupt it, make it worse. The price he asks is your soul, and if you pay it, even if Padme lives, you will become something she cannot love." "How dare you?" Anakin started, but Gandalf stepped closer, his presence radiating not judgment, but compassion. "I have watched countless beings face this choice," Gandalf said. "Power or principle, control or faith, fear or hope. And I have seen what becomes of those who choose power. They become slaves to it, hollow things that wear familiar faces but have lost everything that made them who they were." He gestured to Palpatine. "He offers you a ring of power, Anakin. It will promise everything and deliver only ashes." "The Jedi offer nothing," Anakin shouted, his voice breaking. "They tell me to let go, to accept loss, to deny my feelings. But she's my wife. I can't just—" "I'm not telling you to deny your feelings," Gandalf interrupted. "Love is not weakness, Anakin. Love is the greatest strength in all creation. But love that seeks to control, to possess, to prevent all harm, that is not love. That is fear wearing love's mask." Palpatine, sensing his hold on Anakin weakening, played his final card. "Gandalf speaks of principles while your wife dies, Anakin. I speak of solutions. I know the power to save her, power the Jedi cannot teach you. Join me, and Padme lives. Refuse, and you condemn her to death." "He cannot save her," Gandalf said. "No one can promise that, Anakin. The future is not written in stone. It is a tapestry of choices, and death comes for all in time. But you can choose how you meet that uncertainty, with love that liberates or fear that imprisons." Anakin stood frozen between them. Palpatine offering power and promises, Gandalf offering only truth and hard choices. His lightsaber wavered, the blue blade trembling with his indecision. The moment stretched like eternity. Then Obi-Wan spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "Anakin, I've failed you. I've been your master, but I haven't been your friend. I've told you to suppress your emotions without teaching you how to channel them healthily. But this wizard, this stranger, speaks a truth I should have said long ago. Your love for Padme is not wrong. Your fear of losing her is natural. But Anakin, we must face the future with courage, not control." "Master," Anakin's voice was anguished. "I don't have all the answers," Obi-Wan admitted. "But I know this. Palpatine has been manipulating both sides of this war. He's been using us all, Jedi, clones, separatists, as pieces in his game. If you help him now, you don't save Padme. You become his weapon." Palpatine's facade cracked completely, his face twisting with rage. "You fool! I am offering you everything, power to reshape reality itself, to prevent any loss, any pain, to become you," Gandalf said quietly. "A creature of infinite power and infinite emptiness. A thing that has forgotten what it means to love because it can only possess. That is not salvation, Anakin. That is damnation." Anakin's lightsaber lowered slowly. "Get away from me," he said to Palpatine, his voice hollow. "All of you, just get away from me. I need to think." "There is no time for thought," Palpatine snarled, his composure finally shattering. "You choose now, or your wife dies. The Jedi will never allow your marriage to continue. They will exile you, separate you from her, and when she dies, you will have nothing." "Enough!" Gandalf's staff struck the floor, and power erupted through the room. Not violent, but absolute. A wave of presence that drove everyone back a step. The wizard stood taller now, and for a moment, those present saw not an old man, but something far more ancient and terrible. A being of light and fire, one of the Ainur who had sung the world into being. "You will not have him, Morgoth's echo," Gandalf said, his voice resonating with harmonics that shouldn't exist in mortal throats. "Your time of shadow is ending. The light has come, and before it, you will flee or fall." Palpatine's eyes widened with something close to fear, then narrowed with calculation. "Perhaps I cannot take this one. Not yet. But I have armies, wizard. I have contingencies you haven't even begun to imagine. You may have warned the Jedi, you may have threatened my plans, but I have been preparing for decades. You've had days. We shall see who prevails." He gestured, and the royal guards moved to his side. "I hereby declare the Jedi Order in rebellion against the Republic. All Jedi are to be arrested on sight. And as for you, Gandalf, you are a separatist agent, clearly, attempting to destabilize our government. You will be hunted across this galaxy until you are found and eliminated." "You cannot hunt what will not hide," Gandalf replied, "and you cannot eliminate what will not fall. But yes, Sidious, let us see who prevails, for I have faced darkness before, and I am still here." Alarms blared throughout the Senate building. Clone troopers would be arriving in moments. Obi-Wan grabbed Anakin's arm. "We need to go, now! Get to the temple, warn the council." "No," Gandalf said. "The temple is a trap waiting to spring. We must move to protect the clones first. Remove as many chips as we can before Palpatine issues his final order. That is where this battle will be won or lost." "The clones?" Anakin said, still dazed. "What do the clones have to do with—" "Everything," Gandalf said. "Come, and I will show you. But we must move quickly. The shadow is rising, and we have only hours to kindle hope bright enough to hold it back." They fled Palpatine's office as clone troopers flooded the corridor, weapons raised. But Gandalf's staff blazed with light that dazzled optical sensors, and Obi-Wan's force push cleared their path. Anakin followed, his mind reeling, torn between everything he thought he knew and the terrible new truth Gandalf had revealed. Behind them, Palpatine stood alone in his office, his face a mask of cold fury. He activated a secure comm channel. Execute contingency plans. Accelerate the timeline. Order 66 will be issued within 24 hours. And someone find me everything we know about ancient magical beings. I want to know how to kill a wizard. They regrouped in the lower levels of Coruscant, in abandoned industrial sectors where Ahsoka Tano had been waiting per Gandalf's earlier instructions. The young Togrutta's eyes widened when she saw Anakin. "Master, what's happening? The temple's been put on lockdown, and there are reports that the Chancellor—" "It's true, Snips," Anakin said wearily, sitting heavily on a rusted container. "All of it. Palpatine is Sidious. The war is fake. The Republic is a lie. And apparently, I've been an idiot." "You've been a victim," Gandalf corrected, kneeling beside him. "As have you all. Sidious spent decades weaving his web. You cannot blame flies for being caught. But now you know the truth, and knowing, you can choose how to respond." "The chips," Obi-Wan said urgently. "You said you could remove them. How many? How fast?" "With my power alone. Perhaps a dozen per hour, delicate work that cannot be rushed." Gandalf's expression was grim. "At that rate, we could free perhaps 200 clones before Palpatine issues the command, across a galaxy of millions." "Then we need to recruit help," Ahsoka said. "Other Jedi, medical droids, anyone who can learn the technique. And we need to get word to clone commanders across the galaxy," Obi-Wan added. "Warn them about the chips, give them a chance to resist." "They won't believe it," Anakin said hollowly. "I barely believe it. How do we convince millions of soldiers that they're carrying mind control devices installed by the Republic they serve?" "We show them," Gandalf said, pulling a small device from his robes, one of the inhibitor chips he'd extracted earlier from Commander Cody. "We document the extraction process. We broadcast it across every channel. We give the clones evidence they cannot deny and a choice they cannot ignore. Remain slaves or become free." He looked at each of them in turn. "This is the moment that will define your galaxy's future. Not the grand battles or political maneuverings. This moment, here, in the dark places beneath the gleaming towers. Will you fight to liberate those who have no voice? Will you stand against the tide, even when victory seems impossible?" "Yes," Anakin said, standing up, something hardening in his expression. "I've been selfish, been focused on my own fears, my own problems. But this, what Palpatine planned to do to the clones, to the Jedi, to the entire galaxy, this is bigger than me, bigger than my fear." He looked at Gandalf. "You said love should liberate, not imprison. Then let's liberate every clone we can reach." "That's the Anakin I trained," Obi-Wan said with a slight smile. "Then we have work to do," Gandalf said, planting his staff. "And precious little time to do it. Ahsoka, contact every Jedi you trust. Tell them to go to ground and prepare for betrayal. Obi-Wan, reach out to clone commanders you know personally, Rex, Cody, Bly. Give them warning and evidence. Anakin, you must go to Padme. Protect her, for Palpatine will use her against you if he can." "What will you do?" Obi-Wan asked. Gandalf's eyes gleamed with determination and ancient fire. "I will do what I have always done. I will go where the darkness gathers and shine a light it cannot extinguish. Palpatine believes he controls this game. It is time to show him that there are powers in this universe he cannot bend, cannot break, and cannot defeat." The wizard turned toward the upper levels, where even now, Palpatine was issuing orders and marshalling forces. "The board is set. The pieces are moving. Now we shall see if an old wizard can topple a Sith Lord's carefully constructed dominion. One freed clone, one warned Jedi, one kindled hope at a time." "And if it's not enough?" Ahsoka asked quietly. "If we can't free enough clones in time?" Gandalf looked back, and for a moment, his weathered face showed the weight of 3,000 years of struggle against darkness. "Then we shall face what comes with courage, as free beings choosing to resist rather than slaves accepting tyranny. But take heart. I have faced darker nights than this and seen the dawn. We shall not go quietly into shadow." He began to walk toward the turbo lifts that would take him back to the surface, back to the light where the final confrontation was forming. Behind him, 3 Jedi watched. young heroes finding courage, preparing to fight against impossible odds, kindled to hope by an old wizard who refused to surrender. The galaxy's fate balanced on a knife's edge, and the next 24 hours would determine whether it fell into darkness or found its way back to light. The next 18 hours became a desperate race against time itself. Gandalf established a mobile operation in the abandoned industrial sectors, coordinating efforts across multiple fronts while clone troopers, medical droids, and brave Jedi worked frantically to remove inhibitor chips. The wizard himself moved between extraction sites with impossible speed, his staff glowing as he used his ancient knowledge to guide less experienced hands through the delicate neurological procedures. Commander Rex was the first to undergo the full extraction under controlled conditions. As the chip was removed and he regained full autonomy, truly for the first time in his existence, the clone captain wept. "I can feel the difference," Rex said, his voice shaking as Gandalf sealed the surgical site with a touch that left no scar. "It's like I've been hearing static my whole life and didn't know it until it stopped. There were thoughts I couldn't quite think, questions I couldn't quite ask, and now you are free," Gandalf said gently. "Truly free, to choose your own path. That is a gift precious beyond measure." "What do I do with it?" Rex asked, vulnerability showing through his soldier's bearing. "What all free beings must do," Gandalf replied. "You decide who you wish to be, and then you become it. But first, we must ensure your brothers have the same chance." Rex nodded, determination replacing uncertainty. "I'll contact every clone commander I trust. Some won't believe it. The chips make it hard to even consider the possibility. But some will, and once they see the evidence, once they understand what's been done to us," his hands clenched into fists. "Sir, the clones are loyal, fiercely loyal, but not to Palpatine, to each other, to the Jedi we fought beside. If we can reach enough of them before the order comes down, they'll resist." "Then reach them, Commander," Gandalf said. "Time is our enemy now more than Palpatine himself." Across the galaxy, Obi-Wan's warnings reached Jedi in the field. Some dismissed them as impossible. Others, already harboring doubts about the war's strange progression, went to ground immediately. Master Plo Koon, serving with the 104th Battalion, confronted Commander Wolf directly, and together they examined the chip. The extraction was crude, performed in a military medical bay with limited equipment, but successful. "By the Force," Plo Koon breathed as he examined the device. "Obi-Wan was right. They were going to turn you all into assassins." "Not anymore," Wolf said grimly. "Sir, permission to spread this to the rest of the battalion?" "Granted, but carefully. We don't know how the chips affect clones' ability to process this information. Some may not be ready to accept it." He was right. When Wolf presented the evidence to his brothers, reactions split almost immediately. Some clones, like Sinker and Boost, accepted the truth and demanded immediate extraction. Others became defensive, angry, their chip-influenced programming resisting the very concept of betrayal from within. "You're defective," one trooper spat at Wolf. "The Kaminoans warned us about clones who developed aberrant thinking patterns. You need reconditioning." "I need freedom," Wolf interrupted. "And so do you. Brother, please. Just look at the evidence. Let Master Plo examine you. If I'm wrong, what have you lost? But if I'm right..." The trooper hesitated, the chip fighting against his natural curiosity and fraternal bonds. It was a battle playing out in clone units across the galaxy. Programming versus personality. Control versus choice. In the Senate building, Padme Amidala sat in her apartment with Anakin, processing revelations that shattered her world. Her husband, for they had married in secret, sat with his head in his hands, telling her everything about Palpatine, about the chips, about how close he'd come to falling to darkness. "He played me perfectly," Anakin said, his voice hollow. "Every conversation, every fatherly chat, it was all manipulation. He knew about us, knew my fears, and used them to pull me toward the dark side." "But you didn't fall," Padme said, gripping his hand. "Ani, you could have chosen power. Instead, you chose..." "I almost didn't," Anakin interrupted. Padme, when he said he could save you from death, I wanted to believe him so badly. If that wizard hadn't been there, if he hadn't shown me what that choice really meant." He looked at her with anguished eyes. "I was going to become a monster to save you, and you would have hated what I became. The vision you had," Padme said carefully, "of me dying in childbirth. Ani, you never told me. Because I was terrified, still am." His voice cracked. "How do I face the possibility of losing you? How do I choose hope over fear when fear feels so much more rational?" "The same way billions of beings do every day," came Gandalf's voice from the balcony entrance. The wizard stepped into the apartment. They'd given him access codes earlier, his staff catching the evening light. "You acknowledge the fear, accept that you cannot control all outcomes, and choose to love anyway, not despite the possibility of loss, but in full awareness of it." "That's easy to say when you're immortal," Anakin said bitterly. "Is it?" Gandalf settled into a chair, uninvited, his ancient eyes sad. "I am not human, Anakin. I am Maiar, what you might call angelic. I have walked your world and mine for thousands of years, and I have loved many who were mortal. Hobbits who lived perhaps 100 years at most, men whose lives flickered like candles. I knew from the moment I befriended them that I would watch them age and die while I remained. Yet I loved them anyway." "How?" Padme asked softly. "By cherishing the time we had, rather than mourning the time we wouldn't," Gandalf replied. "By understanding that love's worth is not measured by its duration, but by its depth. And by accepting that death is not the enemy. Death is simply the boundary that gives life meaning." He looked at Anakin. "Your vision showed Padme dying, but visions show possibilities, not certainties. The future is not fixed, young Skywalker. It shifts with every choice made. By choosing to reject Palpatine's false promises, you may have already changed what you saw. Or I might have sealed her fate," Anakin said. "Palpatine said he knew how to save her." "Palpatine lies," Gandalf interrupted firmly. "It is what creatures like him do. He might have prolonged her life through dark rituals that twisted her into something unrecognizable. He might have bound her spirit to this world as an undead horror. Or, and this is most likely, he was simply lying to manipulate you, with no real power to prevent death at all. The Sith fear death as much as anyone, Anakin. If Palpatine could truly prevent it, why would he look so old and corrupted?" Anakin absorbed this, something easing in his expression. "So what do I do?" "You love your wife," Gandalf said simply. "You protect her as best you can. You prepare for the birth of your child. Yes, I know about that. I'm old, not blind. And you face what comes with courage rather than desperation. That is all anyone can do." "Will I lose her?" Anakin asked quietly. "I don't know," Gandalf admitted. "I cannot see your future as clearly as I might wish. But I can tell you this. The choice you made today, to reject power in favor of principle, that was the choice that gives her the best chance. Not because you gained power to prevent death, but because you remained the man she fell in love with. And that man, that good heart despite its fears, that is what she and your child will need most." Padme was crying softly. "Ani, whatever happens, we face it together. Not with you becoming something dark to save me. Together, as we are." Anakin pulled her close, and for a moment, they simply held each other while Gandalf looked away respectfully. Then the wizard spoke again, his tone urgent. "I bring warning. Palpatine is accelerating his plans. My sources, and yes, I have developed sources quite rapidly. Old wizards are good at that. Indicate he will issue Order 66 within hours. We have freed perhaps 800 clones across the galaxy, maybe 1,000 by dawn, out of millions." "Then we've failed," Anakin said hollowly. "We have not failed," Gandalf corrected sharply. "We have bought time and planted seeds. Every freed clone becomes an ambassador to his brothers, someone who can testify that the chips exist and freedom is possible. Every warned Jedi becomes a survivor who can rebuild. We haven't won yet, but we haven't lost either. What's the plan? Padme asked, wiping her eyes and straightening. Senator and Queen reasserting control over grief-stricken woman. We force Palpatine's hand before he's ready, Gandalf said. We make him issue Order 66 in chaos rather than according to his perfect plan. Confused orders reach fewer clones. Disorganized execution gives Jedi time to react. And most importantly, we expose him publicly, beyond all doubt, so that when he declares his empire, he does so as a revealed tyrant rather than a beloved chancellor. How? Anakin asked. Gandalf's eyes gleamed with the cunning of someone who had outmaneuvered Dark Lords before. We give him what he fears most, a public challenge he cannot refuse without losing face. We call him out before the Senate, before the galaxy, and we force him to either maintain his disguise or reveal his true nature. Either choice weakens him. That's insane, Anakin said. The moment you accuse him publicly, his security will kill you. Let them try, Gandalf said with a slight smile. I have faced the Balrog in the depths of Moria, fought atop Celebdil as lightning split the sky, and returned from death itself. Clone trooper blasters do not frighten me. And while they're focused on me, Obi-Wan will be broadcasting evidence to every system in the Republic. We'll force the truth into the light where Palpatine cannot hide it. He'll still have his armies, Padme said. Even exposed, he controls enough military power to seize control by force. True, Gandalf acknowledged, which is why the clones matter so much. If even a quarter of them refuse the order when it comes, if even a fraction choose freedom over programming, Palpatine's perfectly choreographed coup becomes a civil war. And civil wars can be won by the righteous side. I've seen it happen. A communication device chirped. Obi-Wan's hologram appeared, his image flickering. Gandalf, we have a problem. Palpatine just issued a Senate summons. All Jedi are to appear before the full Senate tomorrow at noon to answer accusations of treason. It's a trap. Of course it is, Gandalf said, which is why we will spring it on him instead of falling into it. Tell the council we will attend, but not as defendants, as accusers. Gandalf, the council will never agree to that. Master Windu has ordered all Jedi to go into hiding until we can determine. Master Windu is a warrior thinking like a warrior, Gandalf interrupted. He wants to regroup, reassess, strike from strength. But that gives Palpatine time to consolidate power, issue Order 66 at his leisure, and hunt you all down systematically. No, we must strike now, publicly, before he's ready. Trust me, Obi-Wan. I have done this before. Obi-Wan hesitated, then nodded. I'll present your plan to the council, but Gandalf, if this goes wrong, the Jedi Order ends tomorrow. If we do nothing, the Jedi Order ends regardless, Gandalf replied. At least this way, we end it fighting rather than hiding. The Jedi Council convened an emergency session deep beneath the temple, in chambers shielded from surveillance. Master Yoda sat in meditation, his eyes closed, while Mace Windu paced with barely contained frustration. This is madness, Windu said flatly when Gandalf finished presenting his plan. We'd be walking into the Senate with Palpatine controlling security, surrounded by his forces, announcing accusations we cannot fully prove. We can prove the chips exist, Obi-Wan interjected. We have extracted hundreds. We have documentation, testimonials from freed clones, which Palpatine will dismiss as separatist forgery, Coyote-Mundi countered. The Senate trusts him. They've given him emergency powers for years. They won't believe. They will believe their eyes, Gandalf said quietly. When Palpatine is forced to defend himself against public accusations, when the pressure becomes too great to maintain his mask, he will reveal himself. I have seen it before. Tyrants cannot resist showing their true face when their power is challenged. And the moment he uses Force lightning or admits his Sith identity before the Senate, before broadcast cameras transmitting to 1,000 worlds, that moment, he loses the political legitimacy he spent decades building. A dangerous gamble, Mace Windu said. All battles are gambles, Gandalf replied. But I did not come to this galaxy to hide in shadows while darkness triumphs. I came to stand in the light and dare the shadow to approach. Will you stand with me?" Master Yoda opened his eyes. "Seen much, I have, in my 900 years. Faced many dangers, overcome many obstacles, but never have I met one like you, Gandalf the Grey. An optimist, you are. Infuriating it is." "I've been called worse," Gandalf said with a slight smile. "Yet right you may be," Yoda continued. "Trapped we already are. Waiting only gives the enemy advantage. And taught me something you have. That wisdom without courage is merely philosophy." The ancient Jedi Master rose, gripping his Geimer stick. "Tomorrow, to the Senate we go. Make our stand, we will. Win or lose, do so with heads high." "Then we have much to prepare," Gandalf said. "Obi-Wan, coordinate with freed clone commanders. We need them ready to broadcast counter-orders the moment Palpatine issues his betrayal. Anakin, protect Padme and document everything we've discovered. If we fall, someone must carry the truth forward." "Ahsoka." He turned to the young Padawan who'd been silently observing. "You have a special task." "What is it?" she asked. "You must leave Coruscant tonight," Gandalf said gently. "Go to the Outer Rim, to clone commanders Obi-Wan trusts. Carry evidence of the chips, spread the word, and if Order 66 is issued, if we fail, you must be the seed that grows into new resistance. Someone must survive to rebuild." "I won't abandon you," Ahsoka protested. "You won't be abandoning us," Gandalf said. "You'll be ensuring our sacrifice means something. That is harder than fighting, young one. But necessary." She looked at Anakin, who nodded reluctantly. "He's right, Snips. If this goes wrong, the galaxy will need Jedi who survived, who remember what we stood for." "Then I'll go," Ahsoka said, tears in her eyes. "But Master, come back, alive." "I intend to," Anakin replied. "I've got a kid on the way. I'd like to meet them." The Senate chamber at noon the next day was packed beyond capacity. Every senator, every representative, every journalist and observer who could secure access crowded the vast circular space. Palpatine sat in his chancellor's pod, projected authority and wounded dignity warring on his aged features. "We are here," Palpatine announced, his voice carrying across the chamber, "to address grave accusations. The Jedi Order, which has served the Republic for 1,000 generations, stands accused of treason, of plotting to overthrow the legitimate government, of—" "We stand accused of nothing," Mace Windu's voice rang out as the Jedi Masters entered the chamber through the main doors, walking in formation with Gandalf at the center. "We are here to bring accusations of our own." The Senate erupted in chaos. Shouting, gasps, security guards reaching for weapons. Palpatine raised a hand, signaling for calm, his expression showing perfectly calculated surprise and concern. "Masters, please," Palpatine said. "This is highly irregular. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, proper channels are corrupted," Gandalf said, his voice somehow carrying to every corner of the vast chamber despite not being amplified, as is the man who sits in that pod, wearing the face of a chancellor while serving the darkness. The silence was absolute. "I am Gandalf," the wizard continued, walking forward until he stood in the center of the Senate floor, staff planted firmly, gray robes catching the light. "I am not of this galaxy, and I owe allegiance to no faction within it. I speak as an outsider who has fought tyranny across millennia, and I tell you all now, without ambiguity or doubt, your chancellor is Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, architect of this war, and the greatest threat your republic has ever faced." Pandemonium erupted. Senators screaming accusations and denials. Security forces moving forward. Palpatine raising both hands in a gesture of shocked innocence. "This is outrageous," Palpatine said, his voice trembling with what seemed like genuine distress. "I have served the Republic faithfully for decades. These accusations are clearly documented," Obi-Wan interrupted, activating a holographic projector. Images flooded the chamber. Inhibitor chips extracted from clone brains. testimony from freed troopers, communication intercepts showing connections between Palpatine's office and Separatist leadership, medical records of clone reconditioning. For years, Obi-Wan continued, the Chancellor has manipulated both sides of this war. He commissioned the clone army in secret. He installed control devices in their brains. And he planned, still plans, to use those devices to execute every Jedi in the galaxy simultaneously, eliminating the only force capable of opposing his seizure of absolute power. This is madness, Palpatine protested, looking to the Senate. My friends, you know me. You've trusted me with emergency powers only because of this terrible war. Would I truly? Yes, Gandalf said simply. You would. You have. And you will, unless we stop you here and now. Palpatine's eyes locked with Gandalf's, and in that moment, the wizard saw the calculation happening behind them. Should he maintain the deception or abandon it? Fight politically or reveal his true power? The choice was made. So be it, Palpatine said quietly, and his entire demeanor changed. The grandfatherly warmth vanished, replaced by cold authority. I had hoped to do this cleanly, to transition power peacefully, but you force my hand, wizard. You and these treacherous Jedi who cannot accept that the Republic has outgrown their outdated philosophy. His voice rose, addressing the Senate with power that made the very air vibrate. For too long, the Jedi have held too much influence. For too long, bureaucracy and weakness have paralyzed this Republic. For too long, we have needed someone with the strength to do what must be done. Lightning began to crackle around his fingers. I am that strength. I am the Senate, and any who oppose me are traitors to be eliminated. Scythe lightning erupted toward the Jedi Masters. Gandalf's staff blazed with white fire, and the lightning redirected, scorching the walls instead of finding flesh. There, the wizard said calmly, he reveals himself. Citizens of the Republic, you have seen. Your Chancellor is a Sith Lord, exactly as we claimed. But Palpatine was already moving, his scarred face twisted in a rictus of hatred. Security! Execute Order 66. All Jedi are enemies of the Republic. Kill them! Kill them all! The command went out across the galaxy, and in that moment, the fate of millions hung in the balance. The command rippled across the galaxy at light speed, transmitted through every military channel, reaching millions of clone troopers simultaneously. In orbit above Coruscant, in the jungles of Kashyyyk, on the plains of Megiddo, in the canyons of Utapau, everywhere the Republic's armies fought, the words echoed in clone helmets. Execute Order 66. For a single crystalline moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then chaos erupted. On Kashyyyk, Commander Gree raised his weapon toward Master Yoda. His finger began to squeeze the trigger, then stopped. The chip in his brain fired its compulsion, trying to override free will. But Gree had been one of the clones freed 2 days earlier. The command crashed against his consciousness like a wave against a breakwater. No, Gree said, lowering his weapon even as other clones around him, still chipped, opened fire on the Wookiees and Jedi. I will not. Brothers, fight the Order. It's not real. It's not. His words were cut short as a blast from another clone struck him down. But 3 other troopers in his unit hesitated, the struggle visible in their body language. One dropped his weapon entirely, clutching his helmet as if trying to tear the chip from his own brain through sheer will. Similar scenes played out across 100 worlds. In some units, where Gandalf's warnings had reached and chips had been removed, clones refused the Order entirely, sometimes at the cost of their lives as their still-controlled brothers turned weapons on them. In other units, freed clones managed to warn their Jedi generals just in time, creating precious seconds for escape. Master Plo Koon, warned by Commander Wolf, barrel-rolled his starfighter as his own wingmen, still chipped, opened fire. His fighter took damage but held together as he broadcast on all frequencies. All Jedi, Order 66 is active. Do not trust the clones. Seek shelter immediately. But in too many places, the warning came too late or not at all. On Megiddo, Ki-Adi-Mundi fell, his cone-shaped head pierced by blaster fire from clones he'd fought beside for years. On Cato Nemoidia, Plo Koon's damaged fighter was struck by a second volley and exploded in flames. On Felucia, Isla Secura died surrounded by troopers she'd called friends. The Jedi Order was being decimated, but not exterminated. Gandalf's intervention had saved hundreds who would have died, had sown enough chaos that Palpatine's perfect purge became a bloody, confused slaughter with survivors. In the Senate chamber, Palpatine's revelation and subsequent order created pandemonium. Senate guards loyal to the Chancellor moved to execute the Jedi Masters present, while those senators who'd harbored doubts about Palpatine's accumulation of power found their voices, either in support or opposition. "This is illegal!" Bail Organa shouted over the chaos. "You cannot simply declare an entire order traitors without trial." "I can do whatever is necessary to protect the Republic," Palpatine snarled, his pleasant facade completely abandoned now. His eyes burned with yellow Sith corruption as he gestured, and Force lightning arced toward Senator Organa. Gandalf was faster. His staff swept up, and the lightning earthed harmlessly into the Senate floor, scoring the ancient stone. "You shall not pass," the wizard said, his voice resonating with power that made the very foundations of the building tremble. "You shall not spread your darkness further, Morgoth's echo. Here, you meet the limit of your power." Palpatine's face twisted with fury. "You know nothing of power, old man. I am the dark side incarnate. I have studied the secrets of the Sith for 70 years. What are you but a wandering conjurer with parlor tricks?" "I am a servant of the secret fire," Gandalf replied. And now his form seemed to grow, to fill the chamber with presence that made even non-Force sensitives feel awe and terror. "I am wielder of the flame of Anor. You are but a shadow, a pale imitation of true evil. And before the light, you will fall." He struck his staff against the floor, and white fire exploded outward, not burning, but blinding. Every screen in the Senate chamber blazed with light. Every broadcast camera filming the session flared. And in that moment of blazing clarity, transmitted to 1,000 worlds, every citizen of the Republic saw Palpatine clearly for the first time. Not a kindly chancellor, but a withered creature of hate and corruption, face scarred by his own dark power, eyes burning yellow with Sith malice. The political mask was shattered beyond repair. "Kill them!" Palpatine screamed at his guards. "Kill the Jedi! Kill the wizard! Kill anyone who stands against me!" But Mace Windu's purple blade was already in motion, cutting through Senate guards with Vapad's furious precision. Obi-Wan and other masters formed a defensive circle, protecting senators who declared support for them. And Gandalf. Gandalf stood at the center of it all, his staff blazing like a star, deflecting every attack Palpatine launched with contemptuous ease. "Your power is great, Sidious," Gandalf said, advancing step by step as the Sith Lord retreated. "But it is rooted in hatred, fear, and the desire to dominate. Such power is ultimately hollow. It consumes itself. Watch." He gestured with his free hand, and somehow, impossibly, the Force itself seemed to respond to him. Not because Gandalf wielded the Force, but because he wielded something older, something that the Force recognized as kin. Light side energy flooded the chamber, and Palpatine staggered as if struck. What are you?" Palpatine gasped, genuine fear showing for the first time. "I told you," Gandalf replied. "I am a servant of powers you cannot comprehend, sent to oppose tyranny wherever it rises. And you, Sheev Palpatine, Darth Sidious, Lord of the Sith, you are opposed." Palpatine snarled and unleashed the full fury of his power. Lightning that had killed Jedi Masters, dark side energy that had toppled governments, hate concentrated into pure destructive force. It was the attack that had scarred his own face in his rise to power, the technique that had destroyed Mace Windu in another timeline. Gandalf's staff met it, and the collision of powers created a shockwave that blew out every window in the Senate building. Outside the Senate, Anakin Skywalker stood with Padme and a contingent of freed clone troopers led by Commander Rex. They'd been coordinating the emergency broadcast of evidence when the order came down. Now they watched as the Senate building lit up with unnatural energies, white wizard fire clashing with red Sith lightning. "We have to help them," Anakin said, moving toward the building. "Wait," Rex said, gripping his arm. "Sir, look!" Clone troopers were flooding toward the Senate from every direction, but they weren't moving in coordination. Some were clearly following Order 66, advancing with weapons ready to kill Jedi. Others were moving to intercept them, freed clones shouting at their brothers to resist the command. "It's working," Padme breathed. "Gandalf's plan. It's actually working. The chaos, the confusion." "It's not enough," Anakin said, watching two clone units open fire on each other. Brothers killing brothers because some were free and some were enslaved. "This is tearing the army apart." "Better torn apart than unified under Palpatine," Rex countered grimly. "Sir, every clone that refuses the order is a victory. Every Jedi that escapes is hope for the future. This is what freedom looks like. Messy, painful, but worth it." Across the plaza, a squad of clone troopers approached. Their leader's helmet was marked with Ahsoka's starbird symbol, Commander Appo, who'd served with her for years. "General Skywalker," Appo said, his weapon raised. Then he hesitated, his body language showing internal struggle. "Sir, I received Order 66. You're harboring a Jedi traitor. I'm ordered to fight it, Appo," Anakin said, not reaching for his lightsaber, keeping his voice calm. "You're stronger than the chip. I've seen you make impossible choices, show creativity under fire, care about your brothers. That's not programming. That's you. Fight it." Can't disobey." Appo's weapon trembled. "But sir, you've always been. You've treated us like people," Anakin finished. "Because that's what you are. And people can choose, Appo. You can choose." For a long moment, Commander Appo stood frozen between compulsion and consciousness. Then, with a visible effort that seemed to pain him physically, he lowered his weapon. "I choose freedom," Appo gasped. "And I choose my brothers over order, my conscience over command." He looked at his squad. "Stand down, all of you. This order is wrong. We know it's wrong. Fight it." 3 of his squad immediately lowered weapons. 2 others hesitated, struggled visibly, then complied. 1 raised his blaster toward Anakin, and Appo stunned him with a precise shot. "I'm sorry, brother," Appo said quietly to the fallen trooper, "but I won't let you become a murderer against your will." Rex gripped Appo's shoulder. "You did the right thing. Now come on, we've got work to do. Every clone we can reach, every brother we can free. That's what matters now." Back in the Senate chamber, the battle between Gandalf and Palpatine had reached a crescendo. The Sith Lord, recognizing that his political power was destroyed and his physical power insufficient to kill this strange wizard, made a tactical decision. "You've cost me the Republic," Palpatine snarled, "but I will not lose the war. I have contingencies, resources you cannot imagine, strongholds across the galaxy. This is not over, wizard. It has barely begun." With that, he gestured, and the Senate pod he'd been standing in exploded, a diversionary blast that created smoke and confusion. When it cleared, Palpatine was gone, having fled through secret passages known only to the Chancellor. "Should we pursue?" Mace Windu demanded. "No," Gandalf said, his staff's light dimming as he lowered it. "Let him flee. Let him slink into whatever holes he's prepared. What matters is that he did so as a revealed tyrant, not a beloved chancellor. He wanted to transition from republic to empire seamlessly, with the populace cheering his ascension. Instead, he flees in disgrace, his true nature exposed, his coup in shambles." "He still has armies," Obi-Wan said. "Clone units that followed the order, military forces loyal to him personally. And we have something he doesn't," Gandalf interrupted, gesturing to the Senate chamber where senators were picking themselves up, where the freed Jedi Masters stood bloodied but alive. "We have the truth, now publicly known. We have legitimacy. We have senators like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma who will rally opposition, and most importantly, we have clones who chose freedom over slavery. Bail Organa approached, his senatorial robes scorched from near-miss lightning. Gandalf, Master Windu, we need to move quickly. There are still senators loyal to Palpatine, still military forces following his orders. We need to establish a provisional government, something that represents actual democracy rather than one man's dictatorship. Agreed, Mon Mothma added, joining them. The Republic as we knew it is dead. Palpatine killed it years ago. But from its ashes, we can build something better. Something that learns from the mistakes that allowed him to rise. Padme entered the chamber, with Anakin and Rex flanking her. She surveyed the damage, then straightened her shoulders, Queen and Senator taking command in crisis. Then we build that better Republic, Padme said. Starting now, Senator Organa, Senator Mothma, convene the Loyalist senators. Master Windu, coordinate with surviving Jedi and freed clone commanders. Commander Rex, you speak for the clones now. What do your brothers need? Freedom, Rex said immediately. Real freedom. Not just from the chips, but from forced military service. Senator, the clones were bred to fight. But that doesn't mean we want to spend our entire lives at war. Some of us will choose to keep fighting, against Palpatine's remnant forces, against tyranny. But some will want to be farmers, mechanics, teachers, fathers. We need that choice protected. You'll have it, Padme promised. I'll make it the first act of the new government. All clone troopers are recognized as full citizens with all rights and freedoms, including the right to refuse military service. That'll cut your army in half, Mace Windu warned. Then we fight with half an army of free soldiers rather than a full army of slaves, Padme replied. We'll recruit volunteers, form proper military structures with citizens who choose to serve. It's what we should have done from the beginning. Gandalf smiled, genuine warmth in his weathered features. You learn quickly, Senator Amidala. That is wisdom hard-won but well applied. I had a good teacher, Padme said, nodding to the wizard. You showed us what we'd become, and gave us a chance to choose better. Over the following hours, a new government began to coalesce from chaos. Senators who'd opposed Palpatine's emergency powers formed a provisional council. Jedi Masters who'd survived the Purge, far more than would have lived without Gandalf's intervention, regrouped and began searching for scattered Padawans and younglings. Freed clone troopers coordinated with their still-chipped brothers, working frantically to remove more chips and spread the word of freedom. And across the galaxy, on 100 worlds, the war that had consumed the Republic for years finally, truly ended. Not with Palpatine's planned empire, but with confused ceasefires as separatist leadership, their Sith puppet master revealed and fled, found themselves negotiating with a Republic that suddenly wanted peace more than victory. 3 days later, Gandalf stood on a balcony of the Jedi Temple, looking out over Coruscant. Anakin found him there, silhouetted against the setting sun. You're leaving, Anakin said, not a question. Yes, Gandalf confirmed. I can feel the pull. The way between universes is opening again. The Valor call me home. My work here is done. Is it, though? Anakin asked. Palpatine escaped. There are still Imperial holdouts, still systems that supported him. The galaxy is fractured. The galaxy is free, Gandalf corrected gently. Fractured, yes, wounded, certainly, but free to choose its own destiny rather than having one imposed by a tyrant. That is all anyone can ask. What about me? Anakin asked quietly. You said I was balanced on a knife's edge. Am I safe now? Will I fall to darkness? Gandalf turned to face him fully. Anakin Skywalker, you will face that choice every day for the rest of your life. Darkness will whisper to you when you're afraid, when you're angry, when you feel powerless. That's the nature of being human, or near human, in your case. He smiled slightly. But you've proven you can choose light over darkness when the stakes are highest. And you have something I've found essential for resisting corruption. You have love that liberates rather than possesses. Padme, Anakin said. And your children, Gandalf added. Yes, children, plural. Twins, unless I'm very mistaken. They will be your anchor and your joy, Anakin. They will remind you what you fight for, and they will love you not for your power, but for your heart. Hold to that. Will Padme survive the birth? Anakin asked, the question that had haunted him for months finally spoken aloud. I don't know, Gandalf admitted. I'm a wizard, not a prophet. But I can tell you this, the future you saw, the dark vision of her death, that was the future where you chose power over love, where you became what Palpatine wanted. You chose differently. The future is therefore different. Trust in that and in the medical care she'll receive from doctors who aren't distracted by the collapse of democracy. Anakin absorbed this, something easing in his posture. Thank you. For everything. For saving me from becoming a monster. I didn't save you, Gandalf corrected. I merely showed you the choice clearly. You saved yourself by choosing wisely. He gripped Anakin's shoulder. Now you must continue choosing wisely every day for the rest of your life. Can you do that? I'll try, Anakin said. That's all I can promise. That, Gandalf said, is all anyone can promise. And it is enough. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Mace Windu, and other Jedi Masters arrived to bid farewell to the wizard who'd saved their order. Rex and Cody represented the clone troopers, standing proudly without helmets. Free men now, not property. Padme and Bail Organa came as representatives of the reformed Senate. A debt we owe you, Yoda said, his ancient eyes sad. Repay it, we cannot, for returning to your world you are. But remember you, we will, and honor your teachings. Honor them by learning from the mistakes that allowed Palpatine to rise, Gandalf said. The Jedi were too detached from ordinary life, too certain of their own righteousness, too blind to corruption in high places. The Senate was too eager to trade freedom for security. The clones were victims everyone accepted as necessary. Don't let those mistakes repeat. We won't, Mace Windu promised. The Council is being restructured. Jedi will be encouraged to form connections rather than avoid them, to engage with the galaxy rather than isolate themselves, and will be accountable to the Senate, not above it. The new Republic will have safeguards, Bail Organa added. No more emergency powers that can be accumulated indefinitely. No more clone armies, only citizen volunteers. No more secret manipulations, transparency and democracy, or we accept that we've learned nothing. Then you honor me indeed, Gandalf said, and you give me hope that this galaxy will survive what's coming. For Palpatine still lives, and such creatures are patient. He'll return someday, in some form. But you'll be ready. We'll be ready, Padme confirmed. The air began to shimmer around Gandalf as the dimensional rift opened, pulling him home. But before he stepped through, he looked at each of them one final time. Remember this, the wizard said. Darkness is patient and darkness is cunning, but darkness is also fragile. It requires fear, requires secrecy, requires that good people do nothing. Shine light into shadows, choose courage over fear, and act when evil appears. Do these things, and darkness will always fail. Always. We'll remember, Anakin promised. Good. Gandalf smiled, and for a moment, he looked not old and weary, but ageless and joyful. One of the Maiar in his true form, a being of light and music. Then my work is done. May the Force be with you, and may you be worthy of it. He stepped into the rift and vanished. The months that followed were difficult, but hopeful. The Galactic Republic reformed itself as the alliance of free worlds, with a constitution that limited executive power and enshrined the rights of all sentient beings, including clones, who were recognized as full citizens with the right to choose their own destinies. The Jedi Order rebuilt slowly, having learned hard lessons about attachment, dogma, and engagement with the galaxy. They became advisors and peacekeepers rather than generals, teachers rather than warriors, and they remembered the wizard who'd shown them that wisdom sometimes comes from unlikely sources. The clone troopers, now called the Free Legions for those who chose to continue serving, became some of the galaxy's most respected soldiers and citizens. Commander Rex retired to a teaching position, training the next generation of volunteer soldiers. Commander Cody became an engineer, building infrastructure on war-torn worlds. Apo started a support organization for clones transitioning to civilian life. Palpatine's remnant forces, calling themselves the Imperial Remnant, held territory in the unknown regions, a constant threat, but no longer an existential one. They raided, they schemed, they waited for opportunities. But the galaxy was vigilant now, thanks to Gandalf's warnings. Anakin Skywalker never fell. He remained a Jedi, though one who openly loved his wife and took joy in his children when they were born. Luke and Leia, twin lights in the Force, born without complications because their father had chosen light over darkness. He became a teacher, showing young Jedi that love and duty weren't incompatible, that attachment handled wisely could strengthen rather than corrupt. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, Anakin would look at his children and remember the wizard who'd saved him from the abyss. He'd tell them stories of Gandalf the Grey, the pilgrim from another world who'd stood against darkness and won not through superior power, but through wisdom, courage, and the absolute refusal to surrender to despair. The galaxy remembered him in other ways too. Gandalf's choice became a saying among freed clones. The moment when you chose principle over programming, conscience over control. The Jedi established a memorial in the temple, a simple statue of an old man with a staff, facing down a shadow, with the inscription, "Darkness flees before the light, if the light refuses to dim." And on one particular night, 5 years after Gandalf's departure, as Anakin stood watching the twin suns set on a peaceful Tatooine where he'd brought his family to visit his mother's grave, he could have sworn he heard a voice on the wind, old, amused, and infinitely kind. "Well done, young Skywalker. Well done indeed." Anakin smiled, gathered his children close, and walked toward his wife waiting in the doorway of the moisture farm, silhouetted against the light of home. The shadow had been defeated. The galaxy was free. And somewhere, in a world of hobbits and elves, an old wizard walked again, ready for whatever adventure called next, but content in the knowledge that in a galaxy far, far away, he'd made a difference. He'd prevented the darkness. He'd saved a soul from falling, and he'd shown a galaxy that even in the darkest hour, one person standing for truth could change everything. That was enough. That was always enough.